Okay, right. So, good morning, everyone. So, my name is Harshi Naika, and we'll be doing another interesting and very easy lesson today under the module of Information Technology, right? Under the module of BMGT 1065 Information Technology. So, this is, I think, this is the lesson 11. Right, 11th lesson. So as you can see here, we'll be talking about the computer hardware in a very detailed level. Okay, so in the very first lesson where we discuss quite a lot of things about the introduction, so I told you that when we study about the computer technology, right, when we study about the computer studies, so the information technology, it is important for us to discuss about the components of a computer system, right? So components of a computer system. So basically, if you can remember, in the very first lesson, we discussed about, okay, in a computer system, we have separate hardware components, right? We have separate software component, and mainly we have liveware as well, right? Apart from that, we have firmware. So in the very first lesson, if you can go back to that video play, so you can observe that how we have discussed those things in a very high level, not in a very detailed manner, but in a very high level, right? So you can observe. So I just thought of pick one particular component, which is the computer hardware, right? And discuss it under the lesson 11. Okay, so by now, I just hope that you might have a slight understanding regarding what it means by the computer hardware, right? So I just hope everyone knows what it means by computer hardware. So we'll be talking about what everyone knows in detail, right? So in detail, and there we have to discuss about the functionalities of each hardware and different types of hardware, right? And the basis of where they are located, whether internal to the computer or external to the computer, so we can identify again different types. So based on these kind of classification, we'll be talking about different types of computer hardware, right? So that is what basically we'll be talking about in today's lesson. So here you can see the learning outcomes on the completion of this session, right? Students should be able to identify and understand, explain what does it mean by a hardware. So first you need to have that knowledge, right? Hardware එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියන එක පිළිබඳව you should be able to describe. And then identify different types of hardware. We can see a lot of types of hardware. So rather than mentioning this as the system unit here, so I will remove this one, right? Okay, I will remove that one, and you can basically identify these as different types of hardware in a very high level, right? So, okay, and then I will add some other points here like this main two types of hardware, like internal. Okay, I think now it's way clear. So you can see different classifications are available. Internal, external hardware, right? So internal hardware, simplify, explain this. The hardware components which are located internal to the computer. Okay, hardware components which are located internal to the computers, we identify them as internal hardware. So in going forward in the coming slide, I would explain about the internal hardware using some examples, right? And then we have these external hardware devices, which means whatever the thing which are located are external to the computer, right? We identify them as external hardware, where you need to find a proper way to connect these external devices, maybe by using networking cables, right? Sometimes you have wired options or wireless options. Wired options in the sense, like I mentioned earlier, using networking cables or some other ports, right? Maybe. So using those kind of things, you can connect whatever the devices that you want to use along with the computer to the computer, right? So I would say one example, for an example, let's say if you are using a desktop computer, you need to have a keyboard. If it is a laptop, keyboard is already there. But if it is a desktop computer, if you want to use the keyboard, you have to externally connect it, right? So in such cases, using the cables, right, in a wired options, you can connect such external devices, okay, external devices to your computer. So that is what you call as external hardware, right? The other option is, a wireless option is, sometimes if you have observed this, when you connect the mouse or something, right? Mouse එකක් වගේ connect කරනකොට, it's not necessarily that you have to go along with the, what do you call this, wired options. Sometimes you can go with wireless options as well. Okay, for an example, Bluetooth mouse are there. Sometimes it's just a small thing that you have to connect to your computer, right? And then you can use your mouse along with that. So likewise, there are different ways where you can connect external hardware devices wired or wireless way. So we'll be discussing them in detail, right? And then we have the input devices, right? Even though it is an internal or external, we can again put them under two main things or three main things. One is input hardware devices, right? And the other one is output hardware devices. And then the storage devices we have, and then communication devices we have, right? Which facilitate the user to communicate with the computer. Again, that part also can be removed, right? ඒ part එකත් අපිට remove කරන්න පුළුවන්. නමුත් ඒකත් අපි මෙතෙන්දී ඉගෙන ගන්නවා. Okay. So මේ දේවල් ටික තමයි basicallyම අද lesson එකේදී අපි කතා කරන්න සූදානම් වෙන්නේ. Okay. So here we have come into the introduction of today's lesson, right? So information technology is one of many tools managers use to cope up with the change, right? So in the very first lesson, we discussed the fact that no one can live without information systems today, right? In every single second, we are dealing with the technological devices. Now you are using maybe your mobile phone, maybe your laptop computer. Right? So in every single second, we are dealing with computers, and our screen time has gone up, right? It has created a lot of health issues as well on the other side, right? So most of the business organizations as well, they try to use newest technologies as much as they can. They try to embrace or update their computer systems as much as they can in a very updated manner, right? So that is important because, like I mentioned earlier, otherwise you won't be able to gain the competitive advantage, right? You will not be able to gain the competitive advantage if you don't use these newest technologies, right? Therefore, most of the organizations, they try to update their computer systems with newest hardware elements which make their business operations efficient, effective, and productive, right? And they try to give, most of the organizations try to provide some devices for their users, right? Incurring a huge administrative cost. Some organizations, they do not provide devices, right? With the view of reducing the administrative cost. Instead of that, what they do is they allow their users to bring their own devices. So this thing we will discuss as one of the computer hardware platform trends in our last lesson, right? not providing hardware elements for the business organizations by the business organizations to their employees, but instead of that, what they do is they allow their users to bring their hardware elements, right? Bring whatever the hardware that they want to have when they're working to their business operations. So I'm just clearing you the base, right? So just the implication part of this hardware or the practical aspect of this hardware without getting into detail without identifying before identifying the components, right? So that particular thing, we identify it as a trend, allowing users to bring their own hardware elements to work. We call it BYOD, BYOD, right? BYOD in the sense, bring your own device, right? Bring your own device. So again, you might be having a question, okay, if I take my laptop to the office, right? So in front of the breakdowns, there can be some, failures in my computers, breakdowns in පුළුවන් එක damages එන්න පුළුවන්. So මගේ own device එක මම අරන් ගිහිල්ලා එහෙම damage වුණොත් එහෙම එතකොට කවුද වග කියන්නේ කියලා ප්‍රශ්නයක් එන්න පුළුවන්, right? Yes. So that thing, I think in a very conscious manner, the organization should handle that particular issue if that happens. Right? ඒ වගේ issue එකක් ආවොත් අනිවාර්යයෙන්ම organization එක ඒකට අවශ්‍ය කරන networking facilities, internet facilities, right? It was a breakdowns out, repairing facilities, everything should be provided by the organization. So anyway, what I wanted to tell you is that, so in every employee, every day, they deal with different hardware elements, right? So in most of the organizations, if they are, let's say the service sector organizations, most of the time, they use these desktop computers. They have their own desktop computers. Sometimes the companies are providing laptops as well and some other devices. Okay, so computer hardware is the physical equipment. That part is important. It's better if you can highlight that part. Computer hardware in the sense, any physical equipment, right? So any physical equipment used for input, right? Sometimes you are using physical equipments or the tangible elements. So, hardware in the sense, all the tangible elements, right? Every component that you can see and touch and which are physical, right? So computer hardware is the physical equipment, physical and just write down as tangible equipments. Physical, tangible equipments that we use to input data, right? So we use some computer hardware equipments to input data. Okay. The other thing is we also use some computer hardware elements to do the processing, data processing. And then in return, you will get the output. So I will explain these in detail, what is input and what are the examples and everything. And then you do the processing, right? You do the processing and then do the output activities as an information system. So the hardware elements, so the physical elements, or let's say the tangible elements, which facilitate us to input data and then do the data processing and then go for the output. So for these activities in an information system, we identify them as, physical equipments used for input, processing, and output activities, right? So it consists of the following: computers of various sizes and shapes, right? We have different computers of various sizes and shapes. So that thing we discussed in the very first lesson regarding the types of computers, starting from supercomputers, mainframe computers, mini computer, microcomputer, tablets, and everything, right? So including mobile handheld devices as well, and different input devices are there. right? And various types of output devices are available, right? And the different types of storage devices are available, right? Telecommunication devices. So all these types of hardware can link the computers together, right? So basically, that is what you call as computer hardware. Any tangible element, any physical equipment, which are located internal or external to the computers, right? Which facilitate, which serve as input hardware devices, output hardware devices, or the storage or telecommunication devices, which help us to link the computers together. We identify them as computer hardware. So that is the best and detailed definition that we can give for computer hardware. Okay, so I just hope it's clear. Right. And this part is also important. So why we need computer hardware along with the software? So you see, there is an interrelationship, right? Not just a relationship, there is an interrelationship. So I will give you 1 minute of time to just jot down in a paper what is the interrelationship between hardware and software. So later onwards, when I explain the answer for this statement, you can, compare your answer with my explanation. Just take 1 minute of time, right? Exactly 1 minute of time. So now it's 9:24. So I will take it nearly 9:26. Okay, so I just hope you could able to write at least one sentence regarding this relationship between hardware and software. So usually just get to know the fact that you need hardware, the users, of course, if they want to use a computer, they actually need a hardware elements they need. Otherwise, if you don't have any hardware elements, you can't call that you are using the computer technology. So in a very basic level, you might need a monitor, right? You might need a keyboard. You might need, if it is a personal area network, maybe you have all these things. You might need a mouse as a must. Sometimes if you don't have a mouse, you might have your touchpad in your laptop. So likewise, you can have this, right? So just having this hardware will not help you to, execute or get satisfied with whatever the task that you want to have. මේ hardware elements ටික නිකන් තියාගෙන බලාගෙන හිටියට ඔයාට පුළුවන්කමක් ලැබෙන්නේ නැහැනේ වගේ computing task ටික execute කරන්න, right? In that case, you might need software as well on the other hand. මේ hardware elements මතක තියාගන්න මේක අපි OS කියන lesson නැත්නම් operating system lesson එකේදී මම මේක in detail ඔයගලන්ට කියලා දෙන්නම්. Hardware elements හරියට function වෙන්න නම්, right? Hardware elements හරියට function වෙන්න දැන් mouse එකක් connect කළ පමණින් mouse එක use කරන්න බෑ, right? So එතෙන්දී අවශ්‍ය කරන දේවල් ටිකක් තියෙනවා. device drivers activate කරන්න ඕනේ. එහෙම කරායින් පස්සේ තමයි mouse ඕනම device එකක් computer එකකට connect වෙලා තියෙන ඕනම device එකක් ඔයාට use කරන්න පුළුවන් වෙන්න. So you see hardware හරියට function වෙන්න, okay, to control the hardware. So you need some sort of software. අපි ඒ category එකට කියන system software කියලා. So you see hardware එකක් විදිහට පාවිච්චි කරන්න නම් අපිට software ඕන වෙනවා. ඒ software category එකට අපි කියනවා system software කියලා. right? So you need to have system software in order to use the hardware, right? And then again, you also need the hardware, right? So you see the interrelationship. So, and again, then we have another type of software which is known as the application software. So, when it comes to the software lesson, I will discuss that part in detail, right? So, you have application software. Any user basically direct with not basically deal not with the system software but with the application software, right? So අපි ඕනම කෙනෙක් basically අපි computer එකක් on කරගන්නෙම මොකක් හරි task එකක් execute කරන්නනේ. So in this time I'm working with PowerPoint presentation and I'm opening my browser and Zoom application. So you see මේ තුන open කරගන්න එක තමයි මම අද දවසේ වැඩ පටන් ගන්නකොට මගේ main objective එක වෙලා තිබ්බේ. හරි මම මගේ computer එක switch on කරයින් පස්සේ මම මෙන්න මේ applications තුන open කරගන්න ඕනේ මේ lecture එක record කරන්න නම්. Right? So I didn't think about the utility software available. I didn't think about the operating system. Right? ඕනම computer එක OS එකක් තියෙනවා. So ඒව ගැන නෙමෙයි මම හිතුවේ මෙන්න මේ කියන දේවල් හිතේ පිළිබඳව. Right? අන්න එහෙනම් ඕනම user කෙනෙක් basically deal වෙන්නේ application software. Right? To use this application software, on the other hand, you need hardware. Right? එතකොට දැන් මේක මෙහෙමයි. ඔයා කම්පියුටර් එකේ මේ කීබෝඩ් එකේ මොනවා හරි ටයිප් කරාම software ඔයාගේ හරියට වැඩ නැත්තම් for an example මම කිව්වා system software වල තියෙන operating system එක හරියට වැඩ කරන්නේ නැත්නම් ඔයා මොනවා හරි ටයිප් කරත් ඒක ඔයාට පේන්නේ නැහැ screen එකේ. Right? So that's that. Now let's just assume that operating system is working well, right? And now whenever you open a Word document or something, again you have to open up and what do you call this? Hold on for a second, I'm getting a call. So sorry about that. I just got a call. So එතකොට මතක තියාගන්න hardware අපිට hardware විදියට use කරන්න simply මේ විදියට ඕනම hardware එකක් විදියට use කරන්න අපිට facilitate කරන්නේ foundation එක දෙන්නේ software ඇතුලේ තියෙන system software. Right? So that's that. On the other hand, software ඇතුලේ තියෙන application software use කරන්න අපිට hardware නැතුව බෑ. For an example, Microsoft Word is an application software. But if you don't have a keyboard, if you don't have a mouse in your hand, how could you type? Right? How can you type? There is no way for you to type, no, right? So to use the application software, we need hardware. So that is the relationship. Right. And then we have this internal hardware and external hardware, right? So like I mentioned earlier, internal hardware in the sense, the hardware elements or the components, the tangible elements, which are located internal to the computer and you can't see them externally. Right, so computer එක ගලවලා බැලුවොත් ඔයාලට බලා ගන්න පුළුවන් internal hardware, otherwise you won't be able to see them because they are internal to the computer. So that is why we call them as internal hardware, right? So the examples, if I would take motherboard, right? So in the motherboard you can see the central processing unit, the video card and all, right? Hard disk drive, which is storage device. So these things are located internally, like you can't see it, but if you open up the whole thing, you can find all these elements, internal hardware components, right? Some are, help us to function properly. Some are helping us to, some are serving as the storage devices. So likewise, there are internal hardware components. The other aspect is the external hardware component. So all the external elements, all the external hardware elements which are located external to the computer, like you can connect it through wired or wireless ways, right? We call them external hardware devices. So as we connect them externally to a computing system, we also know them as peripheral devices. Right? Peripheral devices කියලා කොහරි දැක්කොත් එහෙම අපි කියන්නේ මේ externally computer එකකට connect කරන hardware devices වලට ඒක wired වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්, wireless වෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. And then we have these things. එතකොට මෙතෙන්දී මම මේ internal component කියන එක මම අයින් කරනවා. අපි ඒක කලින් කතා කරපු නිසා. ඒ කියන්නේ main two types, internal and external. ඒකේ ඇතුලේ තියෙන්න පුළුවන් මෙන්න මේ subcategories ටික. Okay, so the very first one is input devices, right? Input devices, output devices, and storage devices. So input devices in the sense, any kind of a device which help you to input data. So usually we call there is a process in a computer, right? Input, processing and output. මෙන්න මේ කියන process එක execute කරන system එක තමයි අපි computer system එකක් විදිහට identify කරගන්නේ. Right? Input, process and output. So input in the sense, whatever the things or the raw materials that you provide into a computer. Right? එතකොට මේ raw materials අපි identify කරගන්නවා data විදිහට. We call them data. Right? So you call it data. Using data, you cannot make a decision, right? Raw data will not help you to make a decision. So you need to process it, right? For the processing purpose, there should be, what do you call this, process කරන කොටත් ඒකට computer එකක් අපිට අවශ්‍ය වෙනවා data processing වලට. And then finally, after the processing, you will get this output data. Right? Output data කියලා අපි කියන්නේ නැහැ. අපි output එකක් ගන්නවා මොනවා විදිහටද? information එකක් විදිහට. මේ information එක තමයි අපිට decision එකක් ගන්න help කරන්නේ. ඒ data එක දිහා බලලා අපිට කෙලින්ම decision එකක් ගන්න බැරි වුණා. output එකක් දිහා බලලා නැත්නම් information එකක් දිහා බලලා අපිට decision එකක් ගන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා. So you see we input data and then there is a process going on and then as an output we get information, right? So to input data we need some devices, right? අපි කම්පියුටර් එක process කරන්න මොන විදියකින් හරි අපිට data යවන්න අවශ්‍යයි කම්පියුටර් එකක් ඇතුළට input එකක් ආදානයක් විදියට අපි ඒවට කියනවා input hardware devices කියලා. Okay, so data input කරන්න අපිට පාවිච්චි කරන්න පුළුවන් elements ගොඩක් තියෙනවා. So one is keyboard. When you type certain some sort of things, when you type a command, right? Excel එකේ බලන්න ඔයා Excel එකේ ගිහිල්ලා data enter කියන්නේ මොන හරි numbers ටිකක් enter කරනවා. words ටිකක් enter කරනවා. Excel එකේ numbers process කරනවා. processing මොකක් හරි command එකක් formula එකක් type කරනවා. So you see you can input some sort of things. ඔයාට ඕනම විදිය data එකක් එක letters වලින් වෙන්න පුළුවන්, symbols වලින් වෙන්න පුළුවන්, command එකක්, numeric input එකක්. So whatever it is, if it is facilitating for you to input any kind of an input to a computer system, right? So we call them input devices. For an example, keyboard. Keyboard එකකින් අපිට data input කරන්න පුළුවන්. The mouse එකකින් ඔයාට point out කරලා කරලා command එකක් input කරන්න පුළුවන්, right? මෙන්න මේ ටික තමයි මට අවශ්‍ය වෙන්නේ කරගන්න. right? ඊට පස්සේ අපි ගත්තොත් එහෙම camera එකක්. camera එකෙන් input කරන්නේ මොනවද? රූප, images, videos and everything. So camera එකෙන් අපිට input කරන්න පුළුවන්. If you take a mic, right? mic එකක් ගත්තොත් එහෙම mic එකෙනුත් අපිට input කරන්න පුළුවන් audios and all. Right? If you take a scanner එකකින් අපිට input කරන්න පුළුවන් hard copy එක තියෙන දෙයක් අපිට පුළුවන් digital image එකක් විදියට ගන්න scan එකක් use කරන්නේ. scan එකේ අපි hard copy එක තිබ්බලා අපි scan කරාම අපිට පුළුවන් ඒක computer එකට input කරන්න digital image එකක් විදියට. So you see if there are a lot of what do you call this ගොඩාක් තියෙන ඔය වගේ hardware devices. එතකොට ඒව අපිට data input කරන්න facilitate කරන නිසා අපි ඒවට කියනවා input hardware devices කියලා. Right? So you can write down දැන් මේවා මම ගිය අවුරුදු වල ප්‍රශ්නවල අහලා තිබ්බ දේවල්. Right? And then again we have output devices. Right? So output devices in the sense data process කරයින් පස්සේ ඔයාට අවශ්‍ය කරන output එක live where එකට නැත්නම් user ට පෙන්වන්න විදියක් තියෙන්න ඕනේ. ඔයා keyboard එකේ type කරනකොට ඒක ඔයා දකින්න ඕනේ. right? ඔයා audio එකක් play කරනකොට ඔයාට ඒක ඇහෙන්න ඕනේ. video එකක් play කරනකොට ඔයාට ඒක පේන්න ඕනේ. right? ඊට පස්සේ large audience එකකට ඔයාට video එකක් පෙන්වන්න අවශ්‍ය නම් ඔයා ඒක දකින්න ඕනේ. so ඔය විදිහට ඔයා ළඟ තියෙන දෙයක් එළියට දෙන්න, right? ඔයාගේ computer එකේ locate වෙලා තියෙන දෙයක් එළියට දෙන්න ඔයාට facilitate කරන devices වලට අපි කියනවා output hardware devices කියලා. So one example is your monitor. So whatever the thing that you type on a Word document, you can see. Whatever the presentation slide that you prepare in your computer, you can see. Right? The monitor is providing you an immediate output. The other one is a speaker. So all the sounds that you play, all the audios, the video sounds and everything, every sound is providing as an output using the speaker. Projector. Projector gun. What a large audience එකකට මොන හරි දෙයක් පෙන්වන්න ඕන නම් ඒ output එක දෙන්නේ මොකෙන්ද? Projector එකෙන්. Right? So the projector provide that opportunity. Okay. And then what else we have? The printer. Computer එකේ digital image එකක් හරි digital නැත්නම් soft copy එකක් විදියට available there. What hard copy එකක් විදියට අතට ගන්න ඕන නම් so what you do? So you can simply get a printout. ඔයා command එක දෙනවා මට මෙන්න මේ document එකේ print out එකක් අරන් දෙන්න. So you give the command to the printer and printer will give you the output. So likewise there are a large number of output devices available, right? So those are the examples. And then we have the storage devices. So these storage devices, so these things are also located internal to the computer and the external to the computer as well. Computer එකක් ඇතුළෙත් පිහිටලා තියෙනවා, computer එකක් එළියෙත් පිහිටලා තියෙනවා. Right? So storage devices in the sense, any kind of a device which help you to store data and information. Right? So some storage devices are located internal to the computer. Some storage devices are located external to the computer. So internally, you can see your main memory, right? So your RAM, random access memory, then read-only memory, and then your hard disk drive and also මේ දේවල් computer එක ඇතුලේ locate වෙලා තියෙනවා. The externally ගත්තොත් එහෙම ඔයාට externally දකින්න පුළුවන් computer එකේ පිටතින් තමයි පිටලා තියෙන්නේ. මේකේ තියෙන specialty එක තමයි මේ devices. මේ කියන devices ඔයාට සමහරලාට computer එකට connect කරලා තියෙනවා. ගොඩක් වෙලාවට මේ external storage devices portable. Portable in the sense you can bring them here and there, take them here and there. Right? Not only the internal hard disk drive, but also there are external hard disk drive as well, which has a huge capacity to store data rather than pen drives. And then, like I mentioned, you have pen drives with different capacities, right? Previously, it was the maximum capacity it was providing 2 GB, right? And then the 4 GB and 8 GB, 12 GB, 16, 32, right? 64 GB, 128 GB. So likewise, with different capacities, different pen drives are available. So those are portable storage devices. Okay, so these are the main 3 types, right? So mainly we can identify internal and external hardware devices. Again, we can classify them as, again, we can see them as input devices, output and storage devices. Okay. So in this image, you can see. So in this image, you can see different input devices and different output devices. So you see input device ගත්තොත් එහෙම the keyboard is there, optical pen is there, the joystick is what you use to play games and all, like you are giving instructions, right? And then the keyboard, optical pen, basically you use with the kind of a digital pad or something to write basically. Right? And then the scanners are there, barcode readers are there, right? So barcode reader, you know it, basically whenever you go to purchase a particular good from a shop, right? ඒකේ අනිවාර්යෙන් barcode එකක් include කරලා තියෙනවා. මේ barcode එකේ include වෙලා තියෙන්නේ මේ product එක ගැන A to Z details. Okay? එතකොට මේ product එක ගැන ඔක්කොම details. ඉතින් හිතලා බලන්න මේ details ඔයා manually computer එකට enter කරන්න ගියා නම්, for an example, අප මම යනවා shampoo bottle එකක් ගන්න. එතකොට මේ shampoo bottle එක what is the item number, right? The manufacturer, expiry date. So මේවා manually enter කරන්න ගියා නම්, so it will consume a huge amount of time. So they have a specific code sometimes. For each item, they have a specific code. එහෙම නැත්නම් ඒගොල්ලන්ට use කරන්න පුළුවන් barcode එක, මේ barcode reader එකක් පාවිච්චි කරලා. Right? So they have this barcode reader. So barcode reader එකෙන් අපිට පුළුවන් වෙනවා externally available data එකක් ඉක්මනට input කරන්න computer එකට. මේ reader එක use කරලා. Okay, and then we have the digital camera, right? And then the pen drives. So pen drive also one way of inputting some data, because ඔයාලා pen drive එක තියෙන data එකක් අපිට pen එක connect කරලා computer එකට වඩ පුළුවන් pen එක connect කරලා ඊට පස්සේ ඒකේ තියෙන data එකක් computer එකට දෙන්න. එකත් එක විදිහකින් data computer එකට input කිරීමක්ම තමයි. Right? And then the touch screens are there. So there is no any mouse or something, touchpad මොකුත් නැහැ. Screen එකේ ඔයාට command එක input කරන්න පුළුවන්. Touch screen එකත් එතකොට එක විදිහකින් in one way we can identify it as an input device. And then a webcam, right? The fax, CDs, those are storage devices and at the same time input devices උත් වෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ මේ පැත්තෙන් ඔයාලට ගත්තොත් headset, then the screen, the printers, the plotters, inkjet printers, and the speakers, right? So the projectors, if it has missed that part, projectors are there. So ඔය වගේ තියෙනවා එක එක විදිය output devices. So දැන් අපි මේ part එකේ ඉඳලා අපි මොකද කරන්න යන්නේ මේ input and output devices එක එක components ගැන in detail කතා කරන්න තමයි යන්නේ. So මම හිතනවා මෙතෙන් එනකම් ඔයගලන්ට මම කියලා දුන්නේවා clear වෙන්නේ නැති. Right? කියලා දුන්නේවා clear වෙන්නේ නැති. මොනවාද input output hardware devices කියලා කියන්නේ මොනවාද ඒකේ තියෙන classification මොන වගේ වෙලාවටද අපි ඒක use කරන්නේ, right? ඊට පස්සේ මේ terms වල තියෙන slight differences. So everything I just hope that you could able to get to know. So when it comes to the keyboard, right? Keyboard කියලා කියන එක එතකොට මොකද්ද? මේක ඇවිල්ලා input hardware device එකක්. So you see, when it comes to keyboard, you can see there are a lot of keys available. So here you can see numeric keys. The numbers are available. Here you can see functional keys. If keys කියලා අපි කියනවා ඒවා available. Command එකක් දෙන්න command keys are available. Some other special keys are available. Wordings එක්ක තියෙන special keys කීපයක් තියෙනවා ඒවා තියෙනවා. And then here you can see again the symbols and the numbers, and then here you can see the letters. Right, a lot of keys are available and some other signals සුත් තියෙනවා. මෙම අපි කියන signal lights සුත් කීපයක් තියෙනවා. එතකොට keyboard එක මේක structure එක ගත්තොත් එහෙම ඔය වගේ එක එක keys අපිට තියෙනවා. සාමාන්‍යයෙන් keyboard එකක් ගත්තොත් එහෙම ඔයාගේ desktop computer එකට external keyboard එකක් එනවා. If you have a laptop computer, so there you obviously have the keyboard, right? So some tasks where you can't, where you also can perform using the mouse, you can also perform using a keyboard as well. So that's the specialty. Mouse එකක් පාවිච්චි කරලා අපි perform කරන සමහර task perform කරන්න අපිට facilitate කරනවා මේ කියන keyboard එක. Then සමහර වෙලාවට ඔයාට scroll කරත් mouse එකෙන් පහළට යනවා, right? ඒ වගේම තමයි ඕනම තැනක randomly click කරලා ඉවර වෙලා මේ down arrow key එක click කරාමත් ඔයාට ඒ document එකේ පහළට යන්න පුළුවන්. So likewise අපිට mouse එකක් use කරලා කරන්න පුළුවන් සමහර දේවල් කරන්න අපිට keyboard එක allow කරනවා. Okay. So let's just talk about the functionality. So like I mentioned previously, we have typing keys, we have numeric keys, the functions and the control keys are there. So when you're using a keyboard, right, a person basically can open a document and that person can use the shortcuts for a certain function, right? Shortcuts available. It passe you can play games, right? Command keys පාවිච්චි කරලා games play කරන්න පුළුවන් and some other task execute කරගන්න පුළුවන්. දැන් shortcuts වගේ ගත්තොත් එහෙම control x මොකක් හරි icon එකක් click කරලා ඔයාට ඒ කියන්නේ මොකක් හරි document එක sentence එකක් click කරලා ඒක control x ඔයාට press කරනවා. එතකොට ඔයාට cut කරගන්න පුළුවන්. ඔය cut කරන option එක ඔයාට right click කරාමත් available නේ. Mouse එකේ right click කරාමත් cut කරන option එක available. You see, some task, both tasks you can do by using, so you can same task එක ඔයාට කරන්න පුළුවන් mouse එකක් and keyboard එකම use කරලා. Okay, so control X for cut, right? And then control C for copy, control V for paste, right? And then if you click on a particular thing or control B press කරොත් එහෙම ඒක bold වෙනවා. Control U press කරොත් italic, right? Control I is for italic, control U is for underline, control right is to right align, control left is for left align, right? Control J is for justify. So ඒ වගේ mouse එකෙන් ඔයාට ඒ icon එක උඩ click කරලා command එකක් දෙන්නත් පුළුවන්. ඒ අතර වාරේ ඔයාට පුළුවන් වෙනවා මේ විදිහට එක එක keys පාවිච්චි කරලා commands දෙන්න. පැහැදිලිද? එතකොට ඔය වගේ functionality එකක් තමයි තියෙන්නේ. ඊට පස්සේ අපිට තව input device එකක් තියෙනවා මෙන්න මේ කියන mouse එක. So you see in a mouse there are two different buttons available. One is left button එක තියෙනවා, right එක තියෙනවා. So when you want to click on a particular thing, you can click on the left button. ඔයාට මොන හරි දෙයක් click කරගන්න ඕන නම් double click කරන්න, triple click කරන්න, single click එකක් දෙන්න ඕන නම් ඔයාට left button එක click කරන්න පුළුවන්. Right? මම මේවා in detail මේ very detail කියන්නේ මේවා කියන්න ඕන ඒවා නෙවෙයි. You know this, but traditionally we have to explain everything, right? And then because there may be some people who have with different knowledge capacities, right? මම හිතනවා in detail මේ explain කරන එක හොඳයි කියලා. And then we have this one, left. නැත්නම් අපිට තියෙන right button එක right click කරාම ඕනම තැනක open වෙනවා menu bars. right? ඔයා ගිහිල්ලා desktop එකේ right click කරාම ඕනම තැනක menu bar එකක් open වෙනවා. ඊට පස්සේ application software එකක් open කරගෙන right click කරාම ඕනම menu bar එකක් open වෙනවා. right? So ඕකේ මැද තියෙන පොඩි wheel එකක් ඔයාට scroll කරගන්න ලේසි වෙන්න ඉහළට පහළට යන්න ලේසි වෙන්න the scrolling wheel is available. So in most of the time, other than the mouse, we also have this touchpad as well. අපිට දැන් තියෙනවා touchpad එකක්. එතකොට මේ touchpad එක ගත්තොත් ඒකෙත් left and right buttons available, right? Same thing ඔයාට කරන්න පුළුවන්. ගොඩක් වෙලාවට laptops වලට මේ touchpad එකක් එනවා. But even though my laptop has a touchpad, but still I'm using this mouse. wired mouse එකක් මම use කරන්නේ මේ වෙලාව මට ඒක convenient touch pad එකෙන් මට move වෙනවට වඩා. Okay. And then we have this tracker ball thing. Tracker ball is also which is similar to mouse. එතෙන්ද ඔයාට direction එක නැත්නම් ඔයාට අවශ්‍ය දේ select කරන්න අවශ්‍ය විදියට හසුරවන්න පුළුවන් මේ උඩ තියෙන ball එක උඩ ඔයාගේ ඇඟිල්ල තියලා ඔයාට පුළුවන් අවශ්‍ය විදියට මේක හසුරවන්න. Tracker ball is there. And then the scanner is also there. Right? So the scanner in the sense මම අර කලින් කිව්වා වගේ ඔයාලගේ තියෙන hard copy element එකක් ඔයාට input එකක් විදිහට computer එකට feed කරන්න අවශ්‍ය නම් so you can scan it. Right? So scan කරලා you can take it as a digital image. So scan එකෙනුත් අපිට data input කරන්න facilitate කරනවා. Right? And then we have the microphones. So you know what it means by microphone. Microphone එකෙන් අපිට basically you see sound එකක් වගේ එකක් input කරන්න අපිට facilitate කරනවා. Microphones වලින් sound input කරන්න පුළුවන්, right? And then the light pen is something which facilitate you to අපි කියනවා light pen එකකින් අපිට පුළුවන් digital screen එක මොන හරි point out කරන්න වගේ, right? ඒ වගේ පුළුවන්. And the barcode readers, I told you the fact that you can easily input data within few seconds using a barcode reader. Barcode එකට මේ device එක ඔයාට අල්ලන්න විතරයි තියෙන්නේ. ඒකේ තියෙන laser එකෙන් අර barcode එක read කරලා එතන තියෙන details ඔයාගේ computer එකට feed කරනවා. Barcode reader. So external data එකක් computer එකට feed කරන්න ඔන්න තවත් input device එකක් barcode reader. So the similar thing can happen when it comes to this optical character reader as well. So optical character reader ගත්තොත් එහෙම එතෙන්දෙත් ඔයගලන්ට පුළුවන්කම ලැබෙනවා characters ඒක numeric වෙන්න පුළුවන් letters වෙන්න පුළුවන් අපි කියන ඕනම එකක් character එකක් ඒ characters ඔයාගේ computer එකට input කරන්න optical character reader එකක් OCR පාවිච්චි කරලා කරන්න පුළුවන්. right ගොඩාක් තියෙනවා. ඉතින් මේවා ගොඩාක් ලොකු sorry functionalities තියෙනවා මම හැම එකම in detail යන්නේ නැහැ ඔයගලන්ට මේව දන්නේව නිසා and then you have this magnetic ink card readers, right? So ink card readers basically you used to read the checks and all. So this is also a character recognition technology where we use especially in the industries like banking, right? So the purpose is to streamline the process while do some clearance related to the checks and checks readings and also magnetic ink card reader, right? And then we have this digitizer. So digitizer කියලා අපි කියන්නේ to any accessory that convert analog information, right? So analog information, the examples like touch, sound, light, so those kind of things into digital signal. So digitizer එකකින් කියන්නේ analog information එකක් digital signals විදියට convert කරන්න අපිට උදව් වෙන ඒවට. එතකොට මෙන්න මේ විදිහට අපිට පුළුවන් identify කරගන්න අපි අවට තියෙන input devices, input hardware devices. මේ ඔක්කොම tangible, all are physical, everything you can touch and see. So all these things, all these hardware elements help us to feed a particular data into a computer. Clear the එතකොට මෙතනින් මම මේ recording එකේ first part එක ඉවර කරනවා. ඊට පස්සේ අපිට කතා කරන්න තියෙන්නේ output hardware elements ගැන.